I'm Liz Stebley. I'm one of the co-founders of the Professional Independent Consultants of America, and I'm also the Chief Advocate. That's my self-given title. Before we get started, I just want to say a few words about PICA since we have a lot of guests here today. PICA is basically a national membership organization that was created by 3 independent consultants who realized that there was no single reliable place to go for help. And so, sure, you can spend hours searching the internet or talking to friends, but we decided to pool everything in one place. And so basically PICA is a community where like-minded professionals help each other out. And we also offer education, roundtables, virtual roundtables, of course, coaching, boot camps, mastermind groups, and we now have our own community app. So anyway, that's a little bit about PICA. And today's webinar is an example of the type of programming we like to host. And so with that, I am going to end my commercial and I'm going to introduce our main attraction, David. So I'm super excited to introduce you all to David A. Fields. Many of you are familiar with David's work. And any of you that have come to a prior PICA workshop, I'm sure have heard me recommend his book. Well, that doesn't work with the green screen, sorry. Anyway, we'll send that book out, a link to the book in the show notes. But basically, David and his team help consultants build rewarding firms, consulting firms. They only work with consultants, and they've helped hundreds of consultants just like those of us on this call. Basically, what David and his organization do really well is to help you take it from just one person, usually with under 100, under $1 million in revenue, and to create a bigger firm, a bigger platform. In addition to helping consultants grow and maximize their practices, he also wrote the highest rated book on Amazon about consulting, the one that I recommend all the time. And his weekly article on Wednesday morning is one of the first things I read on Wednesdays. So I promised not to give a long, embarrassing introduction though. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David and his team. I think Robin is the wizard behind the curtain today. And so I'm going to let you and Robin take it away, David.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Welcome everyone. Just because we're on Zoom right now, my recommendation is that you double click. If you've got the whole gallery and like everybody's pictures are up, I'm going to be really small and this screen will be really small. And so double click and pin me to the top, and that will be, that'll just make it easier. Not that I particularly like being pinned to the top, but it will work better for this particular application. Here's what we're doing. We are doing what it says up here and what it says right here, how to be the chart-topping, heart-stopping, gotta have consultant clients call first, which sounds pretty good. Liz, thank you so much for inviting me to play in the sandbox with this group. Some of you have actually been in programs with me. Some of you are signed up to be in a program with me going forward. Some of you probably have no clue who I am. It's all good. We're going to do some amount of me talking, hopefully not too much, and then really open it up for Q&A. So that's kind of the plan for today. I'm really glad that I'm here, and I did a presentation for the global group of consultants in the Bahamas, I think. And I put this up, and the guy after me said, you know, I really like what David said, that, you know, he's glad he's here, but this is what I think. I'm glad I'm here with you. And you know, that's brilliant. So I'm glad I get to be here with you. I want to give you just one moment of really important commands to focus on, which is if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'll either see it or I will, you know, Liz or someone will tell me. Okay, so raise or lower your hand. It's the Alt-Y key if you're on Windows, and it's that other thing if you're on Mac. That will let us see. Otherwise, you know, you can just put it down. If you want to unmute yourself once we call on you, the Alt-A should do that, I think. I'm pretty sure. If not, we'll have to unmute you, which we can do. Okay, and you can always just chat. and the little chat thing will work. Okay. So at any time, raise your hand, ask questions, and that's how we'll do that. So hopefully that makes some sense. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about right side up thinking. I'm going to tell you how you actually take this concept, which many of you know, and put it into practice. And then we're going to do Q&A. And then we're going to do some more Q&A. Then I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Solo Practice Accelerator. And then we're going to do some more Q&A. That's our big plan for the day. And hopefully that sounds good. So let's actually dive in. And the question is, how do you become that, what was it, chart-topping, heart-stopping, gotta-have consultant that clients call first, or maybe the only one clients call? How do you become that consultant? And the answer to this question is actually really, really simple. All around being right side up. If you are a right side up consultant, if you are all about them, not you, there you go. That's how you become it. So that's the easy answer. Let's actually take this to a little bit more difficult answer. First of all, for those of you who are not as familiar with what right side up means, here's kind of typical healthy thinking. Typical healthy thinking, there's you. You're thinking about yourself. That's what's inside your brain space. There's a little bit of room for your family if you like your family. Okay? Maybe there's some room for some friends in your mind, and then kind of everybody else. The rest of the world, right now, like every 4 years in the US, so the rest of the world comes kind of into focus a little bit, but honestly, even the rest of the world goes through that filter of me. This is normal. This is healthy. This is why you are on this webinar today, is because you wanted to see something that would be good for you. Okay, so that's normal, and it's great. And for winning consulting business, it's completely upside down. To win consulting business, we need to flip it upside down and recognize that consulting is not about you. Consulting's about them. Consulting's about your prospects. It's about your clients. It's about the people you're talking to. That concept is the heart of successful consulting. And I mean that's true. So I was telling Liz, I was slightly late getting here because I was just on a call with a prospect. Now, they're a little ahead of probably where many of you are, because they're around $15 million right now. And they were saying, oh man, we really struggle with being right side up. Can we work on that? Yes, we can. This is a lifelong thing to work on. So let's actually put it into practice. What does it mean to be right side up? And right side up actually does apply to every single part of your business, every part of your consulting practice. Consulting's really simple. There's only 4 parts. You got a strategy overall. You have to win engagements. You have to create value profitably for your clients and have some sort of infrastructure that allows you to keep that cycle spinning. I mean, that's really all consulting is just those 4 pieces. So if you can do those 4 pieces here, and I'll show them to you again, you're fine. Just keep that spinning cycle going. And being right side up plays in every single one of those. Okay? Now, let's talk about really this one place, winning engagements. How do you act more right side up in win engagements? How do you make your practice, which you want to win business, how do you make that about them, not you? Okay, so I'm going to show you really practically, like really tactical, exactly what to do. Here are the steps. Oh, first, a right side up firm, the first step is understanding it's defined by them, not by you. Meaning the problem you solve and the solution you offer both should be defined not by you, not by what you're good at, well, not by what you like to do, but by what the market wants. So Mr. Upside Down person here says, hey, it's my firm. I get to decide. I'm the consultant. I built a firm. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. I want to decide what I do. Okay, that's upside down. He's very talented or she's very talented, but it's not great for business. On the other hand, the consultant who's thinking, what do you want? What do you need? is in a position to completely unlock the market. Okay, so that's what right side up means when we're thinking about how do we actually win business. Fundamentally, it comes down to this idea that it is much easier to sell what people want to buy than to find people who want to buy what you're trying to sell. Okay, so just let that sink in for a moment. It is much easier to sell what people want to buy, even though we're not really in a sales business. It's much easier to win business solving problems that people want to solve than to find people who have the problem that you've decided, this is what I'm going to solve. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense? Okay, good. Here's the question I get most of the time when I present this. Like, yeah, but David, I don't do what people want. I published something on this not that long ago and got a feedback, this very comment from a consultant. I couldn't believe I got it from this consultant because he's my brother. Okay, so my brother started working for a consulting firm, I don't know, a number of years back, which was good because then we won them as a client. And he says, yeah, but look, this is the kind of work we do. I'm not just going to go off and do, what if they need, cabbage baking? Well, don't worry about that. And here's why. The people you talk with, the kind of topics you talk about are naturally going to relate to what you do. Okay? You're not going to be in a situation where, cabbage cooking or badger trapping comes up. I'm guessing, I don't know each of you, but I'm just guessing that's not going to come up because most of you, that's not the kind of relationships you've built. Over the course of your career, wherever you are in your career, you have been talking with people, you've been building relationships with folks that kind of understand what you do and are in the general realm. This group I was just talking to today, they work in heavy industry. They work in oil and gas, they work in construction, they work in aerospace, really heavy industry stuff. When they talk to those people, they're not going to hear concerns about, well, how do we get more retail customers? And they would say, oh, we don't solve that. No, they're going to hear concerns related to the type of business that they know because that's where they've been. Okay? So don't worry about that. You can let the market define you and fit into that without having to completely change yourself. Or if you can't, if you've really been, you've spent your whole life trapping badgers, then you might want to rethink what you do. I mean, it's just a thought. Okay? So I'm going to give you 4 next steps, really simply, and then we'll actually just jump into Q&A. 1, let go of your self-definition. Here, let's put this up on the screen, the big screen. Let go of your self-definition. Your success today, where you are right now, is defined by who you've set yourself to be up till now. If you want success in the future that looks different, you're going to have to let go of who you've been up till now. This is extremely difficult to do and extremely important. But that's step number 1. If you want to be that consultant clients call first, you have to stop being the consultant that clients don't call first. Okay? So let go of who you are right now. That creates space for you to become someone else. Then conduct focused research. That means asking your prospects, asking the people that you know, your network, what do you actually need? What problems are you paying people to solve? And finding out from them, not from your own experience, not from what you've done in the past, finding out from them. Okay, so that's step 2. Step 3, listen during every conversation. Most of us think we're better listeners than we are. Listening takes practice. Listening is really difficult. And that's what we have to do if we're going to find the market. We have to listen when we ask the question, what do you need? And that means not saying, oh, wait, you brought up badger trapping. I don't want to hear about that. If that's what they bring up, then listen, understand it. What is it about that? What else do you need? So our next step is going to be is carving out during every conversation to elevate it, to ask folks what else they need. Okay, so you can always create time to understand your clients better. Most of us are heads down working on projects when we're working on projects, and we get very focused in on the project itself. We start talking, just about the nitty-gritty details. No matter what the time is, no matter what the conversation is, you can always take a moment to step back and say, hey, look, before we dive into all the problems we need to get to today, tell me what's going on in your world. What problems have come up? And then listen. Okay? So that's it. It's very straightforward. These are your next steps to become right side up. Just what it says here. Let go of your self-definition. Conduct focused research to find out what your prospects, what your clients want. Listen during every conversation and carve out time to have those higher level conversations. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. It's really just, it's super tactical and practical about how you become more right side up. So with that, why don't we actually turn this over to some Q&A? And I'll answer whatever questions you have. If you can either type something into the chat, or you can raise your hand by doing the Alt-Y thing. Let me put that on the screen so you can see it. The Alt-Y or Option-Y if you're on a Mac. And then we'll answer your questions about how do you become more right side up, or how do you win more business, or frankly, anything else that you want to ask about. Hey, Liz.
David, I do have one question that comes up very frequently in the webinar. In fact, a workshop I just led it yesterday about business development. And I'm always encouraging consultants to do their own outreach and keep their network warm and build relationships over time. And one of the questions that frequently comes up is, how can I maintain right side up thinking, keeping it about the client when I'm really reaching out to them because I'm looking for work?
A great question. How do you focus on them when you're calling to get work, right? So here's what I would suggest. This is kind of how I would think about it. Is when you're making calls. So let's just say call to get work. Okay, and this is what you've got for your day. You've decided what I'm going to do for my day is I'm going to call to get work. By the way, that's kind of what my writing looks like most of the time. This is why my team encourages me to type. I mean, but let's say that's what you set up for your day. You've got this big thing on your monitor. You say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to network. I'm going to touch people. Because I know that the more I do that, the more likely I am to get work. I want you to take your pen, put a circle around the to get work portion of this, and cross it out. Because that's not why you make your phone calls. The truth is, you're not calling to get work. You're calling to build the relationship. You're calling, if you try to get work, it doesn't happen that way. I mean, frankly, it's just not how consulting works. And the reason is, if you call someone you know, you're building a relationship. Liz, you say, I know Deb. And so I want to call Deb. I haven't talked in a while. Maybe she can use my services. Deb either has a challenge, which you can solve, or not. So when you call and you say, what's going on in your world? What's happening? Tell me what the latest is, all of these kinds of things. And she says, well, I'll tell you what, I'm trying to start up the business and it is just no end to problems. Could you help with that? Then it came up. If she says, you know what, things are singing along. I'm gonna be honest with you. This has been the best half ever. I mean, COVID, everybody's at home. It's been great. She doesn't need you. And you can't force her to need you. Clients either have a problem that you can solve or they don't. And you can't create problems for them. Well, you're not supposed to create problems for them, right? So, so don't call to get work. just called to build your network, to nurture your relationships. And when you do that, the work will come naturally. The work will follow. And so does that make sense? Does that answer your question or not really?
Yes, that's exactly what I've been telling people, but it helps to hear it from the master.
There you go.
And which also leads to the next part though. Let's say you are just calling and you're catching up and your client does bring up something that's exactly what you know how to do and that you're really great at. Can you explain to people a little bit about why you wouldn't want to not take that bait and set up a separate call? I think you call it making the turn.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. We talked a little bit about the turn. And so the turn actually functions at any time you're talking or having a conversation in one context and you realize you should have a conversation in another context. And by the way, I want to let you know, Sylvia, that I do see your hand is raised and we will we'll answer your question. And that there are some questions coming in the chat. If you are having a conversation, let's say you're having a conversation with Deb, and Deb raises an issue that you can solve, but you called just to build the relationship. You called to nurture the relationship. That's it. You are in a social interaction. You are in a world of social norms. Winning business is actually the world of market norms. And market norms and social norms do not play nicely together. So if you turn the conversation this way, you say, oh, Liz, thanks for bringing that up. We're really good at that. We could help you. Let's talk about doing a project together. The reaction on the other side is, oh, I guess you actually weren't interested in me. All you really did is you called to sell. And while you might be helpful, next time I might not take your call because I realize you're not interested in me. You're just interested in getting work. So we need to separate. We need to avoid that kind of reaction. And the way we avoid that kind of reaction is by separating the conversations. There's a market conversation and there's a social conversation. We're starting off in a social conversation. I'm calling to find out how you're doing, to talk with you, to nurture our relationship. You bring up all sorts of problems. Now I'll use the turn. The turn is 7 words. We'll do some. We can do a separate webinar on the turn, Liz. Okay. The turn is here, but it'll be hard to read. Are you open to a separate conversation? I hope that's 7. Are you open to a separate conversation? It sounds like this. Deb, some of the things that you brought up just now, these are like center of the plate for us. It's not why I called. So would you be open to a separate conversation where we actually talked about some of these things, how we might be able to play together to solve your problems? She might say, yeah, we could talk about that right now. That's fine, because she has now transitioned it. Or she might say, yeah, we could talk next week. Perfect. Now the context for your discussion about the challenges is completely different, right? So it's no longer social. Mastering the turn is actually, that is one of the most effective techniques you'll ever learn, because it applies not only for these kinds of situations, it applies for winning follow-on business, it applies for expanding inside a client. It's an extraordinarily effective technique. That might be something we should do something on.
Okay.
That's well worth learning.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it today, but now let's get to everybody else.
Okay, so some questions that have come up. Let me take a look down at the board. Was there someone who had their hand up? Did that go away? Sylvia, can you unmute yourself, or do we need to unmute you? You're unmuted. What's your question?
Okay, so thank you so much today for your focus on this topic. I wanted to go back to let go of your self-definition. I think some of us have multiple personalities from our professional personalities, from our background. Yeah. So it's hard to put a cohesive persona together. And then now you're saying, let go of that as well. Can you go into a little bit more detail about that and how to do that and why? Yeah,
sure. I can do that. I'm gonna go back to the board and play on the screen, okay? So here's what you're saying. There's a version of me, and that version of me is I'm you know, some version of what you do, right? I have experience in leadership, okay? And there's a version of me that you can see now why it takes me like 10 minutes to draw a simple stick figure, because I can't even draw a circle. And there's a version of me that actually works on not just leadership development, that actually works on how to help women advance in the workplace. And I've spent a lot of time also learning about enabling teams. And I've done a bunch of projects and spent time really getting myself good on lean techniques. It's like, I can do all sorts of stuff. Right? There's all sorts of versions of me. And the market doesn't care. This is not attractive to a buyer. And when you say, well, wait, there's a lot of different versions of me, you're telling me to let go. Yeah, because right now it's all about you. This is all, whoops, I just erased your head. This is me, 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 me. You're thinking about all the different versions of yourself. And that's upside down. None of this matters. The only thing that matters is the prospects you talk to, the clients you talk to. What do they actually want? To build a good consulting practice, right? To build a successful consulting practice. Now, there is some marriage between what they want and what you love to do. And when you find that marriage, that intersection between what they want and what you love to do, this doesn't get any better. This is a truly fabulous profession. It's fun. The starting point, though, is not to say which version of me should I go to market with. The starting point is to say, what do they want?
Okay.
So, Sylvia, does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it really shifted my perspective, and I know that Liz has been saying similar things, but it helped to hear it in this way, especially with the beautiful graphics. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Doesn't get better than that, right? I mean, this is, I'm telling you, this is art. Art. All right. There was other questions on here. So what's the question? How do you build right side up thinking into your messaging? From Bill. Okay, how do you build right side up thinking into your messaging? Really interesting question. So are you thinking about on, for instance, your website or your marketing pieces, or throwing a little bit of clarity into the chat so I can make sure I'm answering your exact question. And then I'll tell you in general.
This is Bill. Hi. Both website marketing material and through networking, especially. I'm in a group called Provisors, and you meet, it's a referral group. How do you build right side up thinking when you're, someone asks, what do you do? And I'm a fractional CFO, which doesn't tell you anything about what the client does or client needs. So how do you build that into those kind of conversations?
Yeah, we can have a separate conversation about the whole idea of being a fractional CFO. Because there are, that model, as I'm sure you've experienced, has some upsides and some limitations, okay? But separately, in a networking situation, which is very specifically people talking to other people trying to figure out, they're supposed to be telling each other, here's what I do, what do you do, maybe I know someone for you, maybe you know someone for me, right? That's kind of how networking groups work. Okay, here's how you rock networking, those kinds of things. Everybody's going in thinking, how can I find a business? Do you have somebody for me? Do you have somebody for me? Hey, do you have somebody for me? Right? And everybody's thinking like that. They're all completely upside down. If you go in and say, and your thought is, how can I find someone for you? What can we do for you? How could I provide value for you and your clients? Now, it's possible what we do could provide value. You tell me about your clients and let me think about you and what you do. If what I do applies, I'm happy to tell you. If it doesn't, let's not waste time on that. Let me instead think about how I help you. That will help you stand out in any kind of networking, right? Because everybody else is they're not really listening. if you say, well, what I do is I'm a fractional CFO. If you say I'm a fractional CFO that focuses on the retail paint industry, which is where you focus, I'm sure, that would at least make it easier for you to remember, for other people to remember what you do. So that would help. So part of being right side up is making yourself memorable for other people, making it easier for them to represent you. But overall, in that kind of situation, be totally focused on them. Don't even worry about the rest, because they will love you. Then you'll be creating relationships with potential partners, and they will think about you. They will reach back out to you. Now, in terms of your website, every single page on your website should be about the visitor, not about you. Every piece of the website is about the visitor, not about you. What do they want to see? Not what do we want to present. What do they need to see? What path can they follow that will be most helpful? That's how you build your website right side up, okay? As opposed to, so many websites start with about us. And here's what we do. Here's our mission. Like, who cares? I'm sure you're wonderful, but I'm not really interested in your mission. If I'm going to your website, what I want to know is, do you work with people like me? Do you solve the problem I have? And are you credible? Okay, since that's what most visitors want when they're going to a consulting website, you need to show you work with people like the visitor, you solve the problem that they have, and you're credible. And that's it. So, Bill, does that make sense? Does that help?
Very much so. Absolutely. Makes sense. Thanks.
Cool beans. All right. Any other questions? You can raise your hand using the fancy schmancy Alt-Y or Option Y on your screen. I can even go to a fresh page for you if you have a question. You can
David,
also.
I have another question.
Shoot, Liz.
Well, actually, and a comment, which I was typing in the chat.
Okay.
What you were just telling Bill about the website, make it about them. Do that for your LinkedIn profile too. I looked at a LinkedIn profile yesterday for a consultant, and it was me, 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 me. I've been featured in Forbes. I've been published here. I've spoken there, and there wasn't anything in there about how she can help a client.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just kept. I went on.
Really good advice.
Moved on.
Really good advice, Liz.
Right side of thinking and LinkedIn profiles.
Yeah, it is. This concept of right side up thinking is so straightforward, right? It's so simple. It's almost banal, but it's extraordinarily difficult in practice. And I do mean extraordinarily difficult. You look at each one of your emails. I bet you your emails, most of them are upside down. You look at your proposal. I bet your proposals are upside down. I bet your proposals are about you, not your client, or at least in part, right? Think about your conversations. Every one of my conversations, I'll give you just a little tip. Again, like including the conversation I was just on with the prospect and the ones earlier this morning. We start every single conversation the same way. What would make the next 30 minutes or 60 minutes or time together helpful, valuable, useful for you? That's how I start every conversation. What's going to make this useful for you? And then if they say, well, I'd really like to know more about how you work with firms like us. Okay, great. Perfect. We can talk about that. What else? Ooh, and a little tip there. 2 best words ever invented. What else? What else would make this helpful and useful for you? And what will happen is people will, even if they start saying, well, I just want you to talk, they'll start talking about themselves. They'll start revealing. That, what would make this helpful and useful for you, question about an hour ago, turned into them talking pretty much nonstop for 30 minutes, which is good. That's great. Because then when it came time for me to say, okay, would it be helpful, they've done their stuff, would it be helpful for me to actually describe what a typical program for a firm like yours looks like? They're like, yeah, well, I know exactly what to say because they just spent a half an hour telling me, here are my concerns, here's what we're worried about, and here's where we're struggling, and all of that. It was all set up. It made this so easy. I don't know whether I'm going to win this business, right? Don't know. But it's likely. We're talking 2 weeks from today. So if you reach out, I will let you know how it went.
All right.
What else? What other questions do you have about either being right side up, about winning business, about consulting? You could ask about dogs and kids, but I'm not particularly helpful.
I do have another question, actually.
Yeah, and Sylvia's doing the hand wave on the screen.
Okay.
You do the hand raise on the thing with the.
I know.
It's easier for me to see. But Sylvia, what do you got?
It was faster for me. See, wrong side up thinking.
It's all good.
So, David, I'm curious as you're saying all this. When did you, if you can give us an example of when you saw that you were wrong side up thinking and you righted yourself? I think it would help us to, again, shift our perspective and see ourselves. Oh, yeah, that's what he means. I do that too.
Yeah, every day. Every day.
Okay.
Every day, every email, all of us do this. And I'll replay a conversation and think, oh man, I started thinking about me.
When did you have that aha moment that then?
So I'll give you an example. Most emails. So I will admit I'm relatively good at this.
Yeah.
But most emails are still a temptation and some to first write it from my perspective. Here's what I want. Here's what I need. I'd like you to do this. I'd like, these are the next steps. Will you call me? I enjoyed meeting you. I enjoyed talking with you guys today. I think we could work really well together and my group could help your firm succeed. That might be actually my first draft of an email. And then either I will recognize it or someone on my team here will recognize that, like, David, that is totally all about you. All right, okay. One quick sign that is all about me is I started with the word I. I enjoyed meeting you. That's about me. As opposed to, you guys were really delightful to talk with. That's about you. Okay, so I got to make that change. Your challenges are fairly typical and also very fixable. Not about me, not about I can help you. It's about you. So this, I go through this process probably every time I write. For those of you who read my weekly articles, you wouldn't think it takes 5 hours to write something so short and with such terrible illustrations, except now you've seen how I draw. So like 4 hours is correcting a head to make it round. Part of it is the first draft. My natural writing, I will often talk about us, we as consultants, our issues, or something I've seen. And then I need to go back and redraft it because the article's not about me. And it's actually not about us. If you put on gallery view and see all of us on the screen here, it's not about us. The article is about you. You right now looking at me, the article is meant for you. And that means I need to take the original perspective, which was at least a little bit upside down, and shift it to be about you. And the only time I walk away from that is if I'm in some way saying something critical. I will not say, you probably really bite at this. I'll say, many consultants bite at this. And then I'll go back to talking about you. So I won't criticize the reader, but that's an example, okay, of me literally every week taking something that's at best partially right side up and hopefully making it much more right side up.
How do you transition in your language then to then saying what you can do for them?
Well, being right side up doesn't mean you're invisible, right? It doesn't mean you don't exist or you're not of help. It just means you're putting it in the context of being about them. So let's follow this through. You guys were delightful to meet. You're very experienced, and the challenges you're experiencing are typical, but also very fixable. My sense is, so now I'm going to flip it to me. My sense is we could really accelerate your ability to win business over the next 12 months. Okay, so now I've flipped it over to me, because I'm still part of the conversation. Right side up doesn't mean you don't exist. It means you exist in service of your prospect, your client, the person you're talking to. Does that make sense, Sylvia, or am I off in space somewhere?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. It looks like there's other questions. What is your take on the consulting market today, given the lockdown and the pandemic? Okay, here's my take on the consulting business today. Oops, please get this thing unfrozen. Okay, so here's the consulting business is, it used to be this size pie, and I'll tell you what's not happened. It hasn't turned into just this size pie, where it's smaller across the board. Whoops, there's not an easy way to erase this, is there? What's happened is this. The consulting market is actually, pretend those are pie slices. If you can see that, here, I'll put it on the screen. And this slice has actually gotten bigger. And this slice has turned into nothing. Maybe it's just like a 0. So what's happened in the consulting market is some pieces are actually accelerating, and some pieces have completely disappeared. We'll use the example that's fresh in my mind just because it's easy. This firm works, a couple of the spaces they work in are commercial construction and aerospace. The aerospace industry is gone, right? Consulting for aerospace is a disaster right now. Now, if any of you have aerospace experience or working with clients and you're seeing differently, by all means, let me know or correct me. But from what I'm seeing, that market's done for the moment, okay? The commercial construction is booming right now, is absolutely booming. If you are in tech, if you are in construction, if you are in pharma, most of life sciences, especially pharma, it is, you can barely keep up with it. If you are in travel, if you are in entertainment, if you are in aerospace, if you are in oil and gas, those markets are an absolute mess. And so it's not this overall decline. There are some markets that are booming. There are a few markets that have disappeared. And I think there's probably like 30% of the market that is down, that is depressed a bit, and people are just slower to buy because they're anxious. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of general concern in the air, a lot of risk aversion in the air. And as a result, people are just a little slower to buy. So Deepak, does that answer your question? Yeah?
Yes, it does, David. Thank you.
Awesome. And any other questions on that, feel free to ask. It is a little bit of an odd market. There's no question about it. If you'd asked me 3 months ago what I thought was going to happen, I would have said I can see this being a disaster across the board. And what's turned out is, again, just looking at my client base, a lot of consultants had record first halves. Now, there are also consultants. We work with a firm up in Toronto that is in just branding. And they are struggling because discretionary type projects. Another firm that's kind of out of Chicago, they're pretty broad-based. They work on these $1 million, $2 million strategy projects. That's been harder to sell, no question about it, because it's so big and so discretionary. Okay, how do we establish credibility when we've never done consulting before? That's a really good question. If you've not done it, what do you say? I was talking with my dad last night about this topic, and because we just the way the market is going right now, we talk to a lot of folks. I do, and the rest of my team do, and we have an advantage because I've done a lot of this. We've done a lot of this. I mean, we can say from experience, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. I've seen it so many times. Not that your experience isn't going to be a little bit different. Okay? And that's just, it's a nice place to be. We've helped so many companies, and we've made mistakes so many times that we know we're not this step wrong. And I was saying to him, what's interesting is, of course, when we first pivoted to this, we hadn't done this at all. And so then we're talking to the first client going, here's what I think. I can't guarantee it, but here's what I think is right. That's a hard thing to sell. That is much tougher. And so my advice to you is, when you are starting off at the very beginning, make sure you take on subcontracting and you take on pro bono work, and be absolutely straight out honest with prospects. And you might say, look, this is my first time at this particular way of doing it. I have this corporate experience. I have this background. I'm pretty sure this will work. But this would be a bit of a beta. And so if you are willing to be my beta client on this, that would be awesome. And we'll learn together. And then you present the benefits to them. Benefits to them is it's extraordinarily customized. It's probably less expensive. You're going to be responsive beyond, you know, anything anyone would expect, because this is new for you. Okay, so all of those kinds of things. But I would get subcontracting. I would get work that you can then point to, and I would do pro bono projects, because people don't usually turn down free, even if you're new at it. And then you can point to it. Then you've got credibility. Okay, so Keith, does that answer your question? Does that help? We'll assume yes. Silence means yes. Lisa, is it Lisa?
Yeah.
If I print it, can you unmute yourself?
I tried. Can you hear me?
Okay. Did I pronounce your name correctly, or did I screw it up?
Yes, you got it correct.
All right. First win. Okay.
I wanted to make sure you could hear me.
Yep.
Okay.
What's your question?
Thank you. Those two big picture questions were so useful for me. I have a detailed question, because as you go through the example of how to pivot something from upside down to right side up, it's been really helpful for me. So yesterday I sent an email to a client and I had two objectives. One was to follow up on an unpaid invoice. Two was to see, do you have anything else, right? And those are both about me.
Yeah.
Any suggestions for how I send that email so that it's not about me?
Well, an invoice is about you, and it's okay. If they owe you money, you're within your rights to say,
fair.
Hey, will you please send money?
Yeah, fair.
And send an invoice. I will often send invoices and say, woohoo, you get an invoice, and make light of it, and separate those. Okay, your invoice email is separate from your is there more business. And we kind of need to have a whole conversation on how you can win follow-up business, because it's more than just calling and saying, what else do you have? Ideally, you're having conversations throughout your current work. You set up what we call an opportunity assessment. You want to set yourself up along the way, but separate those. Your follow-on setup, maybe your email, maybe separate from the current project or the previous project. Would you be up for a 10-minute conversation more generally about the business? I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing, and I'd love to share with you some of the observations that I picked up during this past project. And that creates the room for you then to go in and have a broader discussion. Okay, does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to transition here to, I wanted to just show you a little bit about the Solo Practice Accelerator, because we have this coming up, and I promised I would tell people what this is. So you tell me whether any of these challenges sound familiar to you. Either you got too few clients in your new business pipeline, or marketing for new clients is really difficult while you're working, or it's really challenging to maximize your income while maintaining flexibility and really enjoying life and all the good things that this profession has to offer. So if any of those challenges sound familiar, here's what I invite you to do, is actually join me. It looks just like this on September 13th and 14th, right, Liz? You were part of it. Looks just like this at the Solo Practice Accelerator. This is 2 really amazing days. It is, I think it's fabulous. Here's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on winning engagements. We're going to focus on profitably creating value. We're going to focus on your strategic health. We're going to focus on your infrastructure. We're going to focus on all the pieces that it takes to build a more successful consulting practice. It is a great group. There are folks here who have been part of it. What I've seen is people actually create relationships that last for well beyond the accelerator, like lifelong relationships, because it's a very small group. It's intimate. We're all consultants, and you'll make really good friends. You will make insane progress on your business during these 2 days. And it's also very real world. I mean, you can see the theory is fine, but it's really about how do you apply it? What do you do for your business? So that's what we're focused on. My opinion is if you are a solo practitioner, this is the best thing you could do for your practice. We're having some website challenges. So rather than going to davidafields.com, where apparently there's a security certificate issue, here's where I'm going to point you. It's a slightly longer URL. Is members.davidafields.com, members.davidafields.com, and then do Solo Practice Accelerator. And then we have a special offer for PICA members, which means if you're not a PICA member and you want to come, you got to sign up for PICA, okay? Which is we will offer also a free 30-minute one-on-one session with me, okay? So that's a special just for PICA members, okay? No one else gets this. If you can make it, I would jump in. Very few seats. I'm not sure, there's a handful of seats left. I'm looking over to my teammate here. I know there are a few seats left. It always fills up. So jump in, and we've got dates. What's that?
Did you mention the dates?
Yeah, the dates are 13th and 14th, September 13th and 14th. It's always a Sunday, Monday, because we don't want to take too much time from your work, nor do we want to take too much time from your family. So we straddle that Sunday, Monday. It's a pretty fun couple of days. Okay, and again, here's the link, which is members.davidafields.com, Solo Practice Accelerator. Okay.
Is this where I jump in and do the plug about when I did this with 2 other PICA members last summer? I will say that even without diligently doing the homework, which I started to do and got sidetracked, my business exploded. So I don't know what the magic was. Maybe it was just putting the time and attention and focus on expanding the business, but we are having our best year ever.
Yay.
Yeah. So thank you. It was definitely well worth the time and the money. And frankly, I was exhausted at the end of it, but it was super rewarding.
Yeah, it's an intense couple of days. I mean, it's not fluff, right? I mean, we dive in. And look, Deb also went and she seconded what Liz said. You just typed that URL and got a not found message. Well, we will figure that out. Here's something you could do. I'll give you an alternative, which is davidafields.com/spa 2020. Okay, hopefully you can see that davidafields.com/spa 2020. What you might get is a security error, and that's because the certificate isn't playing nicely today. I don't know why. And if that's the case, just hit accept. I promise my site is not phishing or doing anything bad, and that will take you to the where you can sign up. So davidafields.com/spa 2020 should work. I'm being told this does work, and it'd be great to have you. And Bill just put the link in.
And Lisa said that it worked for her too. davidafields.com/solo.
All right, perfect. Liz, what do you think? Could we do one more question, or do you want to close out and do a PICA pitch?
Well, let's do one more question if somebody has one. If not, I have another one, of course.
Okay. Was there one further up? Can you? I can't see. Is someone? Lisa, do you have another question, or is your hand still just raised?
No, sorry. I guess I didn't figure out how to lower it.
Yeah, no worries. It's the same thing. Anyone else have a question? Liz?
Okay. So step one of what you talked about in the upside down thinking was let go of your self-definition. And we talked a little bit about that. But one of the things that we encourage people to do at Pika is to know their niche and sharpen the point of their spear. Like, what makes you special and what makes you memorable, right?
Yeah.
Because being memorable leads to referrals. So how does letting go of your self-definition combine with knowing your niche?
Okay, that is a really insightful question. And because you're right on, right? And I also preach focus, right? You got to focus. You got to know where you work. It is vitally important to know the specific area you work, to have to target a narrow population. If you have 500 potential prospects in your market, that is plenty to support a multi-million-dollar consulting practice. Okay? You don't need 5,000 or 50,000. 500 is plenty. At the same time, what I encourage you to do is to still let go. You can talk to those 500 people, for instance. You can say, here's my niche, if I believe there's market there, and ask them, what do they need? What is their challenge? Not what have I been working on, which is where we tend to start. We tend to say, well, here's the projects I've done. I've done these projects and those projects and the other projects. So this is what I'm good at. And this is what people need. No, it's what people needed in the past. And it's what you did in the past. And that may still be valuable. Just open yourself up to change. I started in consulting in 1997, working for a business that was focused at the intersection of retailers and consumer products manufacturers. Within a few years, I found that there were some people who I knew who were outside of that space that were asking for something entirely different. And so I built a practice inside the firm I worked on, which was completely different. I had my own people entirely separate because that's what the market was telling me. Then I built the Ascendant Consortium, which was great and lasted. And then I was hearing from the market, from consultants, we could really use help. I did not go out looking for that. I listened to that, and full transparency, I started working with consultants now, going on 10 years ago, as a lark. I thought, this would be sort of funny. I'll help a couple people. No, the market wants it. So what I do now is a world removed from where I started in consulting 20 some odd years ago. And it's 100% because I just listen to the market. What does the market want? One of my clients up in Toronto, a different client, their business has exploded this year, in part because they did exactly what we went through, the steps we went through, and they heard something that the healthcare market wants that they're not getting. They said, well, we could provide that if you really want it. Did it one time. Does anybody else want it? Now, our biggest problem is actually staffing, is just keeping up with demand. Okay, so you can listen to your narrow market. Liz, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. There's one quick question. I don't know if you want to take the time to answer it, about how important is having a website?
Oh, how important is having a website? These days, it's not negotiable, really. If you're going to be build a consulting practice, if you are going to be a freelancer, by which I mean you're just going to do subcontracting work for an Umbrex, a BTG, any of these kinds of groups, you don't necessarily need a website, actually. So if you're just doing freelance subcontract work, you don't need a website. If, however, you are going to build a consulting practice, you must have a website. That's where people go.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to show your pieces here?
Yeah, I think you just did.
All right.
All right. So I can't actually see the slide now because I'm talking and on speaker view. So basically, just a little close about Pika. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we're a membership organization. We're created by 3 independent consultants. And we really, it's more about, it's an informal environment. We do workshops, we don't record them, they're all interactive. We work on your branding, your pricing, your positioning, your website, your LinkedIn profiles, all of those pieces to really help you build the consulting career of your dreams and live the life you want, basically. So we will be sending out notes, an email after this with links to all of David's information, the workshop he is, the SPA workshop, Slow Practice Accelerator, his book, more information about Pika, upcoming workshops we've got coming up, and that's it for today. So thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed it. David, we got a lot of comments in the chat. Thank you, super valuable. And I knew it would be because you always are full of inspiration and great advice.
Thank you for having me. Thank each of you for joining, really, so much. If you have any questions, just reach out. That's why we're here. We're here to help you.
Exactly.
So, thank you all.